Hey students, today we're talking about the rise of totalitarianism. We're getting into our section on World War II, and we're talking about some different things that led us into World War II today. So we're going to start off by talking about some countries that are expanding throughout this time period. We're going to specifically hit on Japan, Italy, and Germany. All of these countries became totalitarian governments during what we call the interwar years, or that time period between World War I and World War II, which is basically the 20s and 30s. So why did this happen? Remember, World War I, one of Woodrow Wilson's goals is to spread democracy. We want to make the world safe for democracy. That's why we're fighting this war. So what could be occurring that's causing this to happen? And one of the big things that causes this to happen is economics. Economics is going to be a deciding factor when people don't have food, don't have a job, don't have a house. They're going to look for someone that's going to help them get it. And a lot of times that's going to be a dictatorial person, a strong leader. Let's look more specifically at Japan. So we see Japan over here. Now, why do they need to expand? Look, they're expanding into China, Indochina. They're trying to take territories in the Pacific. They're expanding out everywhere. They want to get more resources. They're an island nation. They do not have many resources on the island, and so if they're going to become a big, powerful nation, if they're going to have a big, expanded military, they're going to need resources to do that, and so they're going to expand out in order to accomplish their goals. Italy starts expanding south. So Italy is up here in the north. They expand down into Africa, taking over different countries. Here they move into Ethiopia from Somalia and Eritrea. And Ethiopia appeals to the League of Nations that was newly created, which was supposed to help solve conflicts. So Italy invades. Ethiopia appeals to the League of Nations, says, hey, help us, we need some help here. But the League of Nations, do you think they were able to help? No, they weren't able to help. Main reason, the League of Nations was weak. The United States was not a part of it, neither was Russia, major world powers not getting involved, and so the League of Nations was doomed to fail. Then we have Germany. Germany is also expanding. So we see Adolf Hitler, come to full power in Germany in 1933. Now, what allowed him to rise? Well, the Treaty of Versailles treated Germany so harshly, paying back their war reparations and losing their land and losing their military, caused them to go into economic depression in the 30s. And so they're struggling just like the United States. They lost their territory. They lost pride, they lost their military, and so when Hitler rises and says, hey, we're going to restore Germany back to its greatness, we're going to go back to the good old days, we're going to defy the Treaty of Versailles, people give him that power, and they start expanding out, and they take back the Rhineland, and they move into Austria, and they take back the Sudetenland, the parts of Czechoslovakia, and they start expanding their military and expanding their territory and building up their country. So this moves us into, let's go to 1938, and Hitler announces that he intends to go and annex the Sudetenland, which on the last map that we showed was the little border areas of Czechoslovakia. Many ethnic Germans were living there. And so a conference was called in order to avoid war, and it involved Germany and France and Britain. And they met in Munich, and the result was what we call the Munich Pact, this agreement that they created. Basically, it says that France and Britain are going to allow Germany to annex the Sudetenland as long as Germany promises peace. They promise to stop expanding, and they promise not to wage war in the future. And so Germany agrees. They annex the Sudetenland, and France and Britain go back, and they think that they have avoided war and that they've solved the problems. What that's called is it's appeasement. It's making a concession to another group or country. In this case, Britain and France conceded to Germany. They appeased Germany, allowed them to take the Sudetenland. because they were desperate to avoid war. We had just come out of World War II, 15 years earlier, almost 20 years earlier, and they were desperate to not go into another European war, a worldwide war. And so they gave up the Sudetenland in exchange for peace. However, that peace was short-lived, and World War II was going to begin 11 months later, and we're going to talk about that. So what the Nazis do next is they realized that they weren't done. They knew that they were going to keep expanding. Hitler knew that he wasn't done, and so he decided he needed to make an ally to his east. He needed to make an ally of the Soviet Union. Not really an ally, but he needed to make sure that they weren't going to get attacked by the Soviet Union. So Hitler goes to Stalin, the dictator of the Soviet Union, and they make a deal. It's called the Non-Aggression Pact, this Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact. And basically they are agreeing, they're not allies, they're not necessarily friends, they just agree they're not going to attack each other. And so Hitler knows that if Stalin and the Soviets aren't going to attack him from the east, he can focus on the west. He can turn towards Britain and France and his other enemies on his west. And they also agree to secretly divide up Poland, and then they're going to invade Poland and take it over, which would secure the western border from attack. So on September 1st, 1939, plan goes into action. Germany invades Poland. And the rest of the world realizes that Hitler was not going to keep their word, was not done expanding. And so Britain and France immediately respond by declaring war on Germany, thus starting World War II in 1939. Germany uses a technique they call blitzkrieg, or it means lightning war. They use it to defeat Poland very quickly in a matter of weeks. Blitzkrieg is using speed and firepower, coordinating with tanks and planes and infantry and motorized vehicles, and just striking lightning quick. And so after defeating Poland, Germany turns towards France, which was on their west. France also falls rather quickly. It was May of 1940. Germany invades Belgium, Netherlands, and Luxembourg. We call those the Benelux countries. They are all defeated very quickly. And then he turns towards France and conquers France. And here's a picture of Hitler posing in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. This leaves Britain mainly fighting alone. This is Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Britain. He gives a speech saying, we're going to fight on. We're going to keep going, even if we're the last country standing. We're going to do everything we can to keep going and take on the Germans. And so when Germany turns its attention towards Britain, they realize that it's an island, and so they're going to have to gain control of the skies above Britain. So the Battle of Britain is mainly fought through the air. In the fall of 1940, German Air Force and British Air Force are fighting for control of the skies over Britain. Germany is relentlessly bombing out British cities, but Britain was able to hold on. And in the fall of 1940, Hitler postponed his full invasion of Britain and turned his attention elsewhere, kind of put Britain on the back burner. So Hitler turns his attention towards the Soviet Union. In June of 1941, Hitler breaks his Nazi-Soviet non-aggression pact and invades the Soviet Union. At first, the Germans are very successful. They're pushing the Soviets back. They're making good progress. But the fighting goes into the fall and into the winter. And the brutal Soviet winter allows the Soviets to help hold off the Germans. Are not able to push through the huge mounds of snow and cold. And so the Soviets are able to hold off the Germans, and they're not able to conquer the Soviet Union. So what this does is, now that the Soviet Union has been attacked by Germany, the Soviet Union now joins the allies of France and Britain. So now it's the Soviet Union, France, and Britain taking on Germany. The United States is sitting on our side of the Atlantic Ocean, away from all the fighting in Europe, and there's a debate raging on what does the U.S. do. Do we isolate ourselves, stay out of the madness that's happening in Europe, or do we get involved and try to help the Allies win this war?